What I would like to do now is to go back to the beginning. What I would like to know a little bit about your background, where you grew up. I want for you to talk a little bit about your parents, grandparents, and I will ask you some additional questions, but let's start with the beginning.
I was born in Jamaica. Wonderful parents, my mom, my dad. My dad is Cuban. He's a good man.
Interesting.
Yeah, from come away. After the stock market fell back in the 1920s and 30s, my grandfather left Cuba and came to Jamaica. He's originally from Jamaica, and he went to Cuba at age 23. Met his wife and had children, my dad.
She was Cuban or also Jamaican?
No, she's Jamaican.
Also Jamaican.
He's a mixed Jamaican, Irish, and black. And my grandfather, she was on her way, my grandmother was on her way to New York to nursing school via Cuba. And she didn't get to Cuba because she was going to visit her sister in New York, who was a nurse, Mary, Grandma Mary. And my grandfather, they met each other and they got married. And my dad was born in Cuba. And after the stock market fell, they came to Jamaica, and my father couldn't speak a word of English. You know, we talk about that all the time. You know, and
you know, I've noticed something that when you started talking about your grandparents, your parents, a big smile came to your face.
Yeah.
Obviously, can you tell us what did you learn from them?
My grandfather was a very wise man, very intelligent man. He packed up with a lot of wisdom. He speaks in proverbs. One of his proverbs is, if you don't put, don't look. In other words, if you don't work, how could you get paid if you don't work? If you don't farm, what do you expect to reap? A very wise man. And I spent much of my time with my grandfather before he passed. He was 100 years old when he passed. So he had a lot to offer to us in wisdom.
And what did you learn from your father?
And my dad was just a very smart man. You know, he was very good in math. You know, I can't forget the days he was teaching me how to read the scale rule. I find it to be very complicated until this day. But he was pretty good in math. He was a builder contractor. He taught at Nakabra school in Jamaica. He came to the United States, as a matter of fact, during the war, helped with building bombs. Then he went back to Jamaica after the war. Yeah, my dad is a cool, very, very nice man. He died at 82, as a matter of fact, from prostate cancer. Nice man.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So obviously, before you came to the States, you had to go to school in Jamaica.
Yes.
How far away was the school?
About a mile and a half. I was very young.
Were you bused?
We had buses, yeah. But it was best that we run. So this is my life. This is how my life is. I was born in Betheltown, Galloway, Westmoreland. And we grew up on a farm, a small farm my parents had. And we had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, milk the cows. Yeah, it was fun. Take care of the chickens, get the water grasses. You know, the water grass is a dew from overnight falls on the grass. That's called water grass. So we had to pick the water grass, take it over to the chicken coop, feed them, get the eggs from the coop, had breakfast. Hey, this is all fantastic stuff. One thing, I picked the oranges. You could not pick the oranges and mix it or have it around the milk, because that's a no-no.
Why?
Well, because they get curdled. If you get the orange peel or the rind from the orange and get it close to the milk, the entire gallon of milk is spoiled. You can't do that. These are all fun things, but the beauty about when all this is over, my morning task is done, I had to be at school at 8 o'clock. So we run to school, at times barefooted. It was fun.
So you looked at it, unlike other people that look at it like a problem to see it, you looked at it more like an exercise.
Oh yes, it was an exercise. Not only I, but all of us. This is what we knew. For us, it's not a challenge; it's a daily activity. So it's a norm.
Right.
To others, it could be challenging, but it was fun.
Very interesting.
But here is something that I want to share with you. It was a church school that I went to, primary school. And at 8 o'clock, the doors closed because at that time they're having devotion. And after devotion, then they opened the doors for the latecomers. So everything was timed, timely, precise, because class starts after devotion. Class starts. So
very
the
interesting.
discipline that we learned.
Besides your parents, your grandparents, you did not talk about your mother, your grandmother. Maybe you can elaborate on that. But I also wanted to mention some other people that had a great influence in your life.
Let me add, my mother, a very compassionate, gracious, kind woman, loving, and pretty, my mom. Yeah.
That's where you got the looks.
My mom is just a wonderful, kind woman. She's always given. I think she may have gotten that discipline from our grandfather. He's always given and sharing, given to the community. And I kind of got that principle of sharing and giving from my mom and also from my grandfather. So let me add, and let me congratulate the principal at the school that I attended at that time, Mr. and Mrs. Russell. They were the principal at the primary school that I attended. Organized, disciplined, coordinated. Scholastically, they were mandated to graduate certain school with certain scholastic achievement. And they did. I wasn't all that bright, but I was, probably a B- student at that time. But these two individuals, Mr. and Mrs. Russell, great leaders, great principal, and I ought to congratulate them. They have been very influential in my life. So
anybody else you can think of? Or maybe later?
Later in the years, yeah. After I came to the United States.
What year?
I believe 1970.
How old were you at that time?
Probably about 7 years old. 1970, yeah. Or 8.
Okay.
Yeah. Going to junior high school, I had fun. I wasn't able to speak the American English very well. I'm Jamaican, so I had an accent, like I still do.
Right.
But ironically, Sammy, I met a wonderful gentleman. His name is Mr. Becker. Mr. Becker taught me in junior high school, and he also taught me in high school. And after my 12 for Tolerance event, he and other teachers came to my events. Could you imagine having a junior high school teacher who taught you and a high school teacher at this, the same person coming to your events when you're, of age? That's for me, that's wonderful.
Well, as we discussed in the past, you also mentioned somebody by the name of Dr.
Yeah, Dr. Bernard.
Right.
Now, Dr. Bernard, he is a different brand. I use the word a different brand because his mission is to take you from where you are and make you better.
Wow.
to see life from a different perspective. To see life, let's say, from God's point of view. Okay, this is you as a human being, as an individual. He would take you and bring you up to different levels. The principle is we live our lives in levels and experience each levels in stages. Under the auspices of Dr. Bernard, this is where I am today. I was able to use principles that he taught me to all my students. I've had close to a few thousand students.
Wow.
Because I've had several schools simultaneously: Queens, Bronx, Manhattan, Brooklyn, all over. 5 schools here, 10 schools here. I had staff all over. All the principals, all the schools that we were in, they all learned and taught the same principle. How to shake a hand, how to sit in a chair. The first 25 years of your life is called the learning years. From 25 to 65 is called the earning years. From 65 to your passed on is called the golden years. What do you invest? Your time, your skills, and your ability. The first 25 years of your life, you should be able to ascertain your high school diploma, your bachelor's, your master's, or your PhD. If you haven't done that, well, it's called, other word is called vocation. What is your vocation? A trade. So things are so well balanced and synchronized. So I give Dr. Bernard a lot of credit for providing that discipline, not only to me, thousands of other people. So let's use the word, I am one of his, should we say disciples? Yes.
Interesting, love. How many children do you have?
2.
2. So obviously, you lived by those principles. So obviously, you have instilled the same principles to your children.
Yes. Sammy, the people that I've taught throughout these years, many of them are lawyers, doctors, school teachers, leaders of large companies, engineers, police officers, and they all remember the 25 principles.
Wow.
Now, I've seen many of them. Oh, Mr. Tingling, grab my hand, shake my hand, and then we start talking about the principles, Not only hundreds, thousands of people came through my hands in regards to academic
That's amazing.
teaching. Thousands.
I want to go back right now to more recent days, and I want you to talk separately about SNN, Word of Bonds, and something that you are involved right now, something new, which is Tour of Tolerance.
Mm-hmm. School News Nationwide. I started School News Nationwide back in
What is SNN?
School News Nationwide in 1993. It was at that time that we pioneered television broadcasting, radio broadcasting. We used the New York Times to teach literature and science, the Wall Street Journal mathematics, the New York Daily News for sports, and the New York Newsday also for sports and everyday news. We were able to get every day, these companies dropped these newspapers off to all the schools that we had. Television broadcasting. We were able to get a television broadcasting system going. The students were able to learn how to use the cameras, how to take pictures, to go out to do interviews, and come back and write their stories. And at the same time, do their interviews. So we had stations on Bronx channel, Queens channel, and also Staten Island and Brooklyn channels. So this is where the kids exhibited their journalistic ideals.
So if
hundreds of students.
So I can call you actually
a pioneer,
in a visionary.
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Also, let me add, Sammy. They also produced their own newspapers, magazines, and journals. We created a 52-page New York Times standardized size newspaper, and also a daily news newspaper. For example, let's say your school is PS17. Would have the PS17 Times. Would have the president, secretary, and the treasurer, the photographers, the editors, the managers, just like you would have a regular system. The kids would go to the Daily News building, the PIX building. They'll go all over to see how things are done. Looking back at this, Sammy, I can say that we're pioneers.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Words of Bonds?
Words of Bonds.
How did you start it?
Now, Words of Bonds came thereafter School News Nationwide. School News Nationwide were in the regular school system. Start with a class and teach them broadcast journalism, etc. In the summer program, we started at 6 o'clock. The doors were open at 6 o'clock in the morning. Class starts at 7 o'clock. From 7 to 8, we did martial arts. All the schools we had in Queens, Bronx, all did martial arts. From 8 o'clock, they had breakfast. And from 8 to 9, all the different academic components started. Computer technology, television and broadcasting, radio broadcasting, reading and writing, science, preparing our kids for the September calendar year. Thereafter, School News Nationwide, Words of Bonds started. Why? Well, I was given a task by a good friend of mine to see how African Americans built New York and what happened to them and what happened to New York because of what they did where we are today. So you just get a story, do some research on that, and I did. In the interim, I met a wonderful lady, Sally Freshberg, a Holocaust survivor. And this is back in 1996. And this is how Holocaust survivor Sally and I started, and the Words of Bonds organization was initiated.
So this is, if I understand correctly, a Holocaust project.
Yes, became a Holocaust project. Why? Holocaust survivors are still alive. They suffered greatly, but they're still alive. So what Sally and I did, we created a system in which we bring Holocaust survivors to schools to talk about the atrocities of the past and how we can make things better. Tolerance, empathy, compassion all came into play. When Sally go up to speak sometimes, a very loud room, all of a sudden she says, "I'm a Holocaust survivor," and the room becomes very quiet. So not only Sally and I, but many Holocaust survivors join our organization from visiting schools all around New York City.
You're watching Journey to Success with Bill Tingling, the president of School News Nationwide. We will take a short break and continue our conversation.